This week we are going to take a look at Timo's world. He asked me to give him some feedback on a very interesting setting that he's building. It's got floating islands and continents that are breaking apart. Sounds good, doesn't it? Let's get into it. Hi guys, my name is Jesper and welcome to the Fane of Fantasy. This channel is all about giving you inspiration to master your craft and create fantasy that will truly immerse your audience. As last week, a word of warning before we get into all of this. I'll give you my views and opinions here, Timo, so don't take it as a gospel. Pick and choose the parts that you find helpful and then just discard the rest. Timo emailed me his question and thank you so much for that, Timo. He's Danish like myself. We don't know each other personally, but this also means that I'll now translate what he wrote from Danish into English. Timo, please forgive me in translating. I also took the liberty to cut out a few parts and paraphrase a bit here and there in order to make this short and concise. However, the rest of your email did help me a lot to get the full understanding, so thank you for that. So here goes. My world is literally in the process of ripping itself apart. The world consists of disjointed areas made up from different worlds that was destroyed in the past. We're talking everything from minor island-sized pieces to whole continents. They are held together by temples. You could call these the anchors, and from these anchors you have ropes made from divine alloy that is buried deep beneath the ground. Can you help me with some sort of overview of what sort of consequences would come into play if a world such as ours would start to fall apart? What are some things that would come across as odd if my characters didn't notice? Besides finding massive holes in the ground, of course, where the capital used to be. I'm concerned that I'm taking it too lightly on a local and a global level. At the moment, there are two relatively small parts of the world ripping apart from one another and floating around in the sky. On a local level, one of these pieces consists of a city built into a mountain. Do you think I should be worried about things like oxygen levels? On a more global scale, how about climate changes, movement of animals, earthquakes, tsunamis, anything that can give hints that something is going wrong? Just some pointers on what I should research and include to keep the immersion would be great. All right, first of all, you have something really interesting going here, Timo. To me, there are two routes to take with this, and I think you should explore both. One of them you've mentioned yourself as part of your question, so I won't spend too much time on it, but other than to say that I agree with you. You should research the causes for natural disasters and see which ones would be relevant for you. If I were you, I would go about this with a bit of caution though. Your world is already not natural. I mean, it's different. It's a different world that are now held together by magic or godly powers. So if you lean too much on earthly natural disasters, it might end up being counterproductive. So here I'm thinking about climate changes. The ecosystem here on Earth is massively complex, but in a world made up of interconnecting islands and some continents, who is to say that the climate even works in any fashion like it does on Earth? If you want, you can even explore some world-specific climates that are unique only to your setting alone, and then show how the climate starts to change from that point. What I mean is that you could have the normal climate in your world being very strange already from the beginning, and then either make it more strange or make it more like the climate here on Earth. You know, to your audience, this could be quite cool, but for the characters, a climate resembling the one we have here on Earth would be very strange. In other words, yes, I think you should play with the elements you mentioned in your question there. The other route you could take with this is to consider how people and especially governments react. You know, based on your question, some parts of the world has already ripped apart. So it would be odd if we wouldn't find like government officials investigating what is going on here. Your characters should certainly notice that activities are happening in this sort of venue. I could also imagine how people would get evacuated to certain places that seems more safe. You can have a refugee situation playing out here as well, where other parts of your world won't accept those coming from the troubled part, basically leaving them to live on an island or on a continent that is falling apart. That alone is a very interesting premise. In terms of investigations, I would also expect to find officials from other governments or countries trying to find out what is happening in order to basically avoid the same happening to them. So now I didn't get from your question whether or not the people of your world is aware of these anchors and ropes. I mean, if they are, I would expect the priests in the temples becoming very active, either praying to the gods, perhaps making sacrifices or something like that. You know, something out of character because they are panicking, and maybe they would try getting down to the anchors inside the earth in order to strengthen them or something like that. Your characters might come across strange digging sites if that was the case. One more thing you can consider is that where there is misery, there's also someone trying to benefit from it. So maybe you can introduce groups or factions who approach the characters promising them a solution. If you create a refugee situation, as mentioned before, then this group could be involved in the smuggling of humans, flying them from one continent to the other, even though this is actually illegal or prohibited. There you have it, Timo. I really appreciate the question, and I hope my reflections will be useful to you. For the rest of you watching, if you too would like me to review an element of your world building and giving you some tips and tricks and inspiration, you can just head over onto Patreon. There's a link in the description field right below this video. When you sign up at the $3 tier, just post some context about your world together with your question. You can do all of that inside the Patreon only feed, and then I will do a video like this just for you. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to follow me on social media and subscribe. Stay safe out there, and see you next Monday.